All right. Welcome to Rxperience, ASCP's podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chad Wurz. I'm the chief executive at ASCP, and I'm alongside Tom Hansel of Hansel Health. And we are having one of our episodes where we bring in one of our pillars of industry, one of our leaders in long-term care pharmacy. And we're very happy to have Alan Obringer here from Florida, from Guardian Pharmacy. Alan, welcome to the show.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So, Alan, I think just to kick off and get started, you've been in long-term care a long time. You own a pharmacy in Florida. Kind of just walk us through, Alan, the pharmacist. How did you get here, and what's your career path?
Yeah. So my career path did not start in long-term care or in pharmacy ownership. I graduated from pharmacy school at the University of Rhode Island. So go Rams.
Oh, wow.
And then pharmacy, when I graduated, was your ticket to go anywhere you wanted to go. So we were just chatting before here about the 28-degree weather where you guys are. I wanted to go away from that. So
Good choice.
Used my pharmacy degree to relocate down here actually move to the west coast of Florida. And I actually worked retail. So I worked for CVS through school. CVS was not here in Florida yet. So I worked for Eckerd when I first moved down here to Florida, and worked for them for quite some time, and actually left when CVS started opening stores here. And then CVS bought Eckerd. So now that's just one big long line on my resume just says CVS for many, many years. I was a district supervisor for CVS as we were expanding and growing in this market. I really liked it. One of the pharmacists I work with was actually a consultant pharmacist, and he said rather than working extra shifts for CVS, you should get your consultant license, and you can do some consulting work with me. So I really started off as kind of a part-time consultant. On a day off from a retail shift, I would go to a nursing home or assisted living facility, do some consultant work. Really enjoyed it, but never thought of it more than just a kind of a hobby, I guess, a paid hobby, but a hobby nonetheless. And it wasn't until I decided, hey, I'm kind of done with CVS. I want to look elsewhere, that I interviewed with a long-term care pharmacy that's more towards the center part of the state to be their consultant pharmacist. I never thought in a million years they would hire me. I kid you not, when they asked what kind of special skills do you have, I said I can open jars and reach things on high shelves. I got hired. And I was actually the start of their own clinical department. They had outsourced consulting until me. And then that kind of opened the door to long-term care, and we created a clinical department, hired other consultant pharmacists, brought all that stuff in-house, worked on their P&T committee, created a formulary. Really just unbelievably great experience. I'm super grateful for. And it was privately owned. The owner actually owned a bunch of nursing homes here in Florida and in other states as well. And when he decided that he wanted to close his Florida pharmacy location, that's when Guardian approached me to open a location here in Orlando. So opened Guardian Pharmacy of Orlando in 2017. Nice. As the president, and we kind of started from scratch, built the business. Can't believe I'm going to say this, but this year will be 8 years, which is crazy. It's gone by super fast, but have built this pharmacy from 0 residents to just about 4,000, which is where we sit today. So it's certainly been fun. Guardian's been great to work with as well. Very unique model. There's other Guardians obviously here in Florida. We all work together. We share some clinical programs and things like that. But as far as the operations of the pharmacy, that's all done from here in Orlando. And I'm just blessed to have a really great team around me, because we make miracles happen every single day. So it's pretty great and pretty rewarding as well.
That's pretty awesome.
So
I didn't realize your path was 2017 when you started that. That's amazing. You've had quite a run of success. That's quick to build a business like that. That's awesome. I also didn't know, I had a good friend when I went to pharmacy school that moved to Florida when we graduated. I'm an old school pharmacist, so I was a BS and then kept going the extra 2 years to get my PharmD. But when I graduated in '98 with my BS, he bolted to Florida and worked for Eckerd. His name was Rob Reese. I don't know if that. I know he moved into the general vicinity of where you were, but I didn't know if you knew him or not. But that made me familiar with Eckerd, and I know Eckerd was a great place to work as a pharmacist.
Yeah, the name unfortunately doesn't ring a bell. I worked right by the corporate office over in the Clearwater area. And as far as being a pharmacist is concerned, Eckerd was great. Their struggle was the technology was. Yeah, they're no longer, so I don't want to speak poorly of them, but it was behind the times then. So, and it just was too heavy of a lift to try to upgrade what they had. So it was really more of, well, let's just keep putting Band-Aids on it. And then that's when they finally decided, hey, we should probably move on to something else. And again, they changed ownerships. JCPenney bought them while I was there. And, focus changed a bunch of times. But, again, being by the corporate office, it really was very pharmacy focused. So it was not a bad place to start as a pharmacist. And there was a huge pharmacist shortage. I'm sure you guys remember that. Yeah. And so, I was the only pharmacist in my store for better part of 2 years. So I was working 13 out of 14 days, which, is really good financially, but not so great for the one's personal life.
Right. Now, what got you into pharmacy at the beginning? Like, why'd you go to school for pharmacy? The University of Rhode Island is a notoriously famous pharmacy school. We have a lot of members that went through that school, but what got you there?
Yeah, so actually, it's a pretty simple story. I went to high school in Central Massachusetts. Actually born in Pittsburgh, but my family relocated when I was a kid. So grew up in Massachusetts. My high school had a career day. And had a whole bunch of people that came in, and the very first table was a lady who was a pharmacist who worked for CVS. And I never made it away from her table, just asking questions about what it was that she did and how she did it and what was school like and all that other kind of stuff. So career day ended, and I had made it exactly one table in. And from that point forward, I kind of knew that I wanted to go to pharmacy school. At the time, there were no state schools in Massachusetts that had pharmacy schools. So you could go on what was called the New England Regional Program to Connecticut or Rhode Island. And so everybody, a bunch of my friends are from Maine and places like that. And, we all landed in Rhode Island because that was the closest pharmacy school to where we were. I actually did get accepted to the University of Florida, which oddly enough, I do some teaching through there currently. But my mom said, Rhode Island's much closer.
Yeah,
so
right.
She didn't discourage, but she made a point of saying how much closer Rhode Island was than Florida was to Massachusetts. So I took the hint, and I definitely don't regret it. Rhode Island was great. It was the number one party school while I was there. I like to, think I had something to do with that. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, actually, the ASCP regional meeting there a couple years ago that was in Newport. I actually had an opportunity to take my wife to the school. We had some time before I had to catch a flight home, and man, it's so different. I mean, granted, it's been I'm not going to say 25 years, but since having gone there, but it was. The pharmacy building has moved to the opposite side of campus. It's new. It's all modern and up to date and all that, which I knew, obviously. But it was pretty cool to be able to take her and say, oh, yeah, I spent way too much time here and going to school.
That was a good inadvertent plug because our Northeast Regional is back in Newport this year.
That's
so
right.
There you go.
March 28th.
You might come again. You might come again.
Okay. Yeah. I loved it. The Viking Hotel was awesome.
Yeah. It's a fun, I think that's part of the reason we decided to go back is it's a great location. Yeah. I mean, Newport, Rhode Island is just beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
And quintessential, North New England town. So
Alan, I know right off the bat that you're smart because you're from Pittsburgh. And and a Steeler fan and Penguin fan. But tell me. You
guys can't help it.
Look, he's even wearing the gold tie.
I know,
right there,
inadvertent, probably. Yeah.
But back in the day, in 2017, I think you said it was, when Guardian reached out to you, kind of, obviously that was the right decision. Guardian's one of our nation leaders, and they certainly did things and still do things quite a bit different and better than most other, large pharmacy chains out there. But what was it about them that kind of made you say, man, I'm gonna jump into this and represent Guardian down here in Orlando?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of two things. There was an existing pharmacy in Tampa and an existing pharmacy in Daytona. So having met the two gentlemen that run those pharmacies and get a chance to know them and kind of fit in with them, because I knew that I was going to come in and be right in between. So I was going to step on people's toes no matter what. So getting a chance to meet them and kind of say, okay, these seem like guys that I think I can work with. But then the other part was really just the unique setup of everything is run out of here. We don't have necessarily a corporate office. We have a support services center that's out of Atlanta that helps us with contracting and purchasing and all that kind of stuff. But as far as the day-to-day running, that is really fully on us to figure out what's best. We do all of our data entry, all of our billing, all of that stuff is all here with my team in Orlando. There's not a centralized version of that. As Guardian has continued to grow, that support services has grown, but a lot of the clinical stuff that we now do nationally started here in Orlando or here in Florida. And that's really just been super fun to know that if you have an idea, you can explore that. And yeah, you might fall flat on your face and go, oh, that turned out to be a bad idea. But they give you the freedom to go down the road. And if you're successful, they want you to share it with others. Mm-hmm. So we've really been fortunate, and then also made some good decisions and had some good ideas. Our clinical program is really top notch, and that you see that when you go out. I try to spend as much time out in our communities as I can, and talking with the nurses, the doctors, the patients, anybody that's out there, you can really see the stuff that we do and the benefit that it has. And that's obviously super rewarding. Coming from a retail side, it was always, I guess Mrs. Jones feels better. I filled her antibiotic and she hasn't been back yet.
Right.
Just long-term care is just so you can see the resident improving. You can see them succeeding. Whether they are discharging and going home or there's someone who's going to be long-term care, but they're now going to activities and things like that. It's just been really rewarding, and certainly Guardian has provided that platform to be able to do that.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
And do you see the transition? Obviously, Florida is one of the major areas where elderly geriatric people are at, so that continues to grow. But nationwide, we know that geriatrics is growing, the elderly population is growing. But now, the nursing home beds, so to speak, aren't really growing. So everybody's talking about providing our services at home, that long-term care at home patients. You guys have more than probably any other state per capita, I would imagine. Mm-hmm. What have you done is starting to get out maybe a little bit more away from the skilled or AL to that home? Have you guys started going down that pathway yet?
Yeah, we have. So interestingly enough, obviously I've been doing this for quite some time. The skilled patient that we see today was in the hospital 5-10 years ago. The ALF patient that we see today was in a nursing home skilled environment, 5 or so years ago. So we've seen that shift out of the hospital, into skilled, and now we're seeing those more complex patients in the AL setting. But our model actually works for following them after discharge. So whether they go home or wherever they're going to go, being able to provide those clinical services, and obviously dispensing of meds is critical. I mean, that's we're a business, and that's the business that we have is the dispensing side. But being able to provide those clinical interventions, the consultation, all that other kind of stuff, we actually do it here in Florida. I think almost all of our pharmacies have some version of long-term care at home. I know our Jacksonville pharmacy does a ton of it. They've partnered with the hospital to be able to do it. We do some of it here through some of our nursing homes that actually do long-term care at home for their patients. So where they normally would have admitted them into the the rehab side. Now they're doing that rehab as outpatient, but still using us as the pharmacy and using our resources to provide some of those clinical interventions.
That's awesome. I mean, I think, as we look out, 2020, we're 2025 now. We have a new administration. I think ASCP looks at that with a lot of the associations up here as potentially some opportunity. We've had a very restrictive and stubborn Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services for a long time. And getting some new people in place might afford us the opportunity to move the needle forward for pharmacy, particularly long-term care pharmacy. What are your thoughts on that as we kind of push forward to 2025? What you guys do is critical to that conversation because you're seeing patients not only that you need to take care of in different environments beyond AL, just even what you just said about sort of the shifting tides of where people end up living, but there's starting to become a demand from that population that, hey, I want the same packaging that I had in the nursing home while I was there for 2 weeks. I want that at home. That keeps me organized. That might, potentially keep me here at home longer if I'm getting some of those services that have been typically unique to that AL or to that SNF environment.
So I think it's twofold. The clinical side is getting reimbursed for the clinical things that we provide to them. So like CCM, chronic care management, some of those things where now there's avenues for you to bill and collect to be able to provide consultant pharmacist service for those folks. And again, the overall goal on both sides is, like you just said, keep them in whatever environment it is longer. So if they're in an ALF, we want to keep them in that ALF for as long as possible. If they're at home, we want to keep them at home for as long as possible. And then the other side of it is the reimbursement from the pharmacy side. So, that's really continuing to push back against like the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. That, especially for me coming from a retail environment, that is very generic driven, whereas the long-term care environment is very brand driven as far as the profitability is concerned. So while I totally understand the overall goal of, reducing the end user's cost, that really puts a hamper on our, profit model when you're attacking those expensive brand names, and now you're limiting our ability to, to manage those higher cost drugs. And again, for all of our homes, we're trying to get them off of higher cost drugs onto lower cost because again, it needs to be a patient win, pharmacy win, and a facility win. So if you can get them on the lowest effective cost and therapy, that's going to be a win all the way around. But to again have the outside, the government pushing on, okay, we want to reduce these handful of drugs or these 12 drugs, that really puts a strain. I think Guardian nationally, it was in the millions as far as just the insulin cost reduction.
Right.
And we have to, again, that's a way of life. We have to figure out, okay, how are we going to make up for that to be able to still do all the other stuff that we do?
Right. And I think that's the challenge. And I think, I'm always kind of on the positive side. When it comes to some of this stuff, I think there are some opportunities, particularly, again, for pharmacies that do the kind of work that long-term care pharmacies do. I think there's some hidden opportunities in IRA. I don't know that we know. We get all kinds of opinions on what the Trump administration might do with IRA, but it seems like they're going to try to fix it as opposed to get rid of it. And we have to be standing there with, hey, one of the things that you need to fix is, take this disincentive away from pharmacies that are trying to do the right thing, trying to provide access to the right medication, but economically have been put in a position where they can't, or it will reduce their level of service. So there's got to be a way to create fixes around it that support the kinds of things that are done. And we have to do it because this population is growing, and they're outside of traditional SNF and AL settings, and they're going to want and need those services. I watch my dad over the holidays every night get his pill minder out and fill his pill minder. I do this for a living.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is this isn't right. Like, this is not the way. At some point, he will make a mistake. And it just doesn't make any sense that we don't have resources for individuals like that clearly can be at home, but they have complex medication needs, and they need the services that go along with those complex medications.
Yeah, they need to be, they're a geriatric patient. They need the same level of care and opportunity that someone that is in the AL has.
Right.
They might not need 24-hour nursing, but they definitely need support in the other areas of their healthcare. And when it comes to medicine, I think that's an easy win for America to be able to provide very similar type of consulting and packaging that they would get inside of an assisted living.
And at the end of the day, it saves the system dollars. Like, putting him in a nursing home is a much more expensive option than what he's doing now. You know, even if you had to pay a little bit more for the right services and a little bit more for the right medications. I mean, I think I was preaching to the choir, but
we all vote yes.
Yeah, and that's getting the people who make those decisions to understand what it is that we do and how it's not just a normal pharmacy. I mean, I had the opportunity a few years ago to meet with both Florida senators and their staff, and actually took them not just to my pharmacy, but also took them out to a nursing home.
Awesome.
And they didn't have any clue that we even existed. I think they all thought, hey, you know, all these people get their prescriptions at Publix.
Right. Right.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They don't even get their groceries from Publix because, you know, they all the meals and stuff are provided. So it's, again, it's trying to educate so that they understand why what we do is different and why it needs to be treated differently on the reimbursement side. So, yeah, you know, a $4 dispensing fee for a retail pharmacy might be fine, but, you know, it cost me $13 basically to fill a prescription.
Right.
So if I don't make that, you know, I've already started off behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, for sure. And this is where ASCP, I know you've been very involved with ASCP over the past several years, but give me your thoughts on kind of, I guess, the importance of what you just did, educating, working directly with ASCP. Basically, it comes down to making sure that senators and congressmen and women are aware. They don't even understand what a nursing home is or a long-term care pharmacy is. But give me some of your examples of kind of what you've done and what you think that we need to continue doing.
Yeah, so I'm actually, relatively new member for the last 6 or so months of the Government Affairs Committee with ASCP, and getting a chance to see how that committee works and reaches out to all of the various senators, whether they're incoming, outgoing, existing. We're fortunate there are several. Buddy Carter, who's my neighbor here out of Georgia, that are very pro-pharmacy. I know is a pharmacist. So it's getting everybody onto that level. And, you know, there's a million ways to try to do it, whether it's, you know, putting your name into the grassroots email chain, which is obviously super easy. It's already written for you. You just add your name and where you are at the bottom. To, you know, I'm fortunate, you know, obviously we have a brick and mortar establishment that someone can come and see, and I can walk them around and introduce them to the people that work here and what they do and how we help seniors. And I think that's the piece that has the most impact is to actually for them to physically see it, and not just, you know, again, not just read about it or hear about it or anything like that, but actually physically see what it is that we do.
Yeah, and doing those kinds of things are critical. Like, I think in some ways, you know, the pandemic was a tragedy, but in some ways it was helpful because it did help us articulate what long-term care pharmacy was. Mm-hmm. Because the older adults in congregate care environments like assisted living and SNF were so burdened, it created this opportunity to say, hey, wait, we've got these pharmacies, these special pharmacies that you probably never heard of that do this work and almost act like a hospital pharmacy more than they do a retail pharmacy. And they're the ones that can walk these therapeutics in, they can walk the vaccines in and take care of the issues that we had in the pandemic. That's helped make those conversations where somebody says, well, I don't even know that you guys existed, made it a little easier. I think the other thing that's happening is, you know, we all have parents and grandparents, and all of a sudden, everybody's got a story that has something to do with medications or maybe being in assisted living or being in a nursing home. And now it's there's connections being made. You couple that with like the third of the triangle, which is, Brett Guthrie, who's been a huge pharmacist proponent of provider status, is now in charge of one of the key committees in the House. Buddy Carter, that you mentioned, he was actually a member of ASCP. They're not allowed to be members of associations when they're in Congress, but he was. His pharmacy was a long-term care pharmacy, or maybe it still is. He is on Energy and Commerce, huge, powerful committee. Senator Thune is going to be the majority lead in the Senate. He was the lead on the provider status bill. All these things are starting to align where these conversations, now they're important not only to say, hey, this is what goes on, and you may have never heard of it before, but now it's, hey, this is what goes on, and we need to invest in this, or we need to push this forward because we all recognize how important that is. So I hope, and again, I'm very positive, but I think things are coming that are going to fall into place for long-term care pharmacy.
Well, the United States healthcare in general is going to continue getting flooded with seniors, right?
Yep.
And there is going to be some tragedy stories out there where that senior needed long-term care type of consulting and pharmacist and packaging, and they lived alone or whatever it was, didn't have access, wasn't sick enough to be in a nursing home, or didn't even have a nursing home available, and some things are going to come out on the news, but hopefully we can get ahead of that through education.
Yeah, for sure. And Al, I'm going to ask you kind of a weird question, but at what point do you feel like, and maybe you're already doing this, where it makes sense for you to have a more public presence? I remember working in long-term care pharmacies where it was kind of nice to be in an industrial park and you'd put the name up there, like you'd put Guardian up there, but you wouldn't put pharmacy because you didn't really want people to know that there were narcotics in there. Yeah, we got drugs. But now it's almost like we want the pharmacies to have more of a public perception because we hope that eventually it does come down to, hey, I'm on 8 meds. I would prefer to get my meds from Guardian Pharmacy because they'll package it for me. They have a consultant pharmacist talk to me. They may mail it or deliver it to me, which instead of me walking into the pharmacy. But I need that service. I need that service. I mean, do you think it's there? Do you think it's coming?
Yeah. So I'll tell you exactly what we do. We are on both sides of the same coin because we use social media to put out there the stuff that we're doing, the stories of how we help people make it through the hurricanes, all that kind of stuff. We want all that stuff out there. Yet when you come to my pharmacy, it doesn't even say Guardian on the door.
Yeah.
Unless you're coming to visit me. It's because again, like you said, we don't need people to know like we have a whole bunch of drugs here. We are not a destination. Everything we do is delivered out.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're absolutely right. People need to know what we're doing. So that's why we're using the LinkedIn, the Facebook pages, all that kind of stuff to try to do, some social media marketing, obviously through our websites and things like that. We want everybody to know, about us, but not necessarily exactly where we are and where we keep the drugs.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that the part of it too is as you're doing the long-term care at home via the nursing facilities in the discharges, there's a word of mouth part of that. Like, somebody could be visiting a friend and be like, oh, what's that? Like, I'm sure there's people out there that have no idea what a pouch packet looks like or any sort of dispensing technology. So I'm sure that's starting to begin to have ripple effect. And again, all that stuff helps up here when you're trying to push policy or even legislation.
So if I'm a young pharmacist and I've already decided to be a pharmacist, what would you say if I said, hey, I'm considering long-term care? Is that the right way to go, or should I look at other options?
Well, the first thing I would tell you is you need to take my rotation because it is the best.
There you go.
So I have a mug that says so. It says best rotation ever. I think the first thing that I tell all my students, and we're very fortunate, I have 2 students currently on rotation with me. We get them throughout the course of the year, 4th year students, 2nd year students, all ages basically. But one of the things I tell them is, listen, when you are out on rotations, every rotation you're on is a job interview, and it's also your chance to see exactly what that is. And do you like it versus, I have to spend 6 weeks here, but this is not what I want to do. And then I'm quick to point out, when I was in pharmacy school, I had a long-term care rotation and I hated it And I was like, I'm never going to do that. I'm never, ever going to do that. And now I do exactly that. And it's super duper rewarding. So never shut off any doors or anything like that. And then we're fortunate. I have some new graduate pharmacists that work for me here. You know, one of the things that we tell them, and they actually came through my rotation. So that's how we met them and got associated. One of the things we tell them is, hey, listen, none of the pharmacists that have been here, this is nobody's first job. It's not my first job. It's you know, all of our older pharmacists, that it's not their first job either. But it's a great place to start. It's a great place to build your clinical skills. It's a great place to avoid getting yelled at by customers because, again, you know, we're dealing with the nurses, med techs, the doctors, and those things. So it's much more of a healthcare professional environment. And, you know, we've had folks that have left and have gone on to other things, research positions, you know, working for other pharmacies. And, you know, it's just such a great place. And again, like I said, my team here is awesome. So we take what we do very seriously. We do not take ourselves very seriously. And that just makes for a really fun work environment. So, awesome. You know, I think that's, you know, find a boss who you can work with, find an environment that you enjoy, people that you like working with, and that's going to make for the start of a very long and healthy career.
No, I love that. I mean, I did start because I did a rotation with an Omnicare pharmacist in Cincinnati, and that's how I got exposed to it. And it did resonate with me as the place to go because you could walk out of pharmacy school and have more of an impact clinically than just walking into a community pharmacy at the time. So I applaud you for doing that. Thank you for doing that. You know, your students, I guarantee, love the fact that they get to do a fun rotation and probably learn something they had no idea existed before they walked through your doors. And I think, you know, you even told a story about high school and having an experience in high school. Like, we need to be doing that. And hopefully ASCP can provide some tools to pharmacists out there so that they can go into high schools and into pharmacy schools and talk about long-term care, because I still think there's a lot of students out there that have no idea that there's this little offshoot of the world that is pseudo between the retail and the hospital setting that kind of has the best of everything. And we need them because we have so many people moving into that age group. So
that's right.
Well, Alan, thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you for being a member of ASCP. Thank you for being on today. And I love the fact that you're like, we've done a lot of podcasts going back to the 70s and 80s, talking to these entrepreneurial pharmacists that built great businesses. I'm so happy I'm talking to one that did it in 2017 so that we can resonate to those young pharmacists out there that this is a great place to work. This is a great place to make your career. So appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys.
All
nice
right.
talking to you.
Appreciate you, bud.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode of Rxperience.